She served her husband's mistress a glass of juice, then walked out of the mansion without a word. No screaming. No scenes. Just quiet revenge. What no one expected was that she'd vanish completely, only to be found a year later. When her past comes knocking, will she finally choose love that lets her breathe? The villa gleamed under fairy lights, music floating gently in the summer air as Claire Bennet stepped inside wearing a pale blue satin dress and heels that pinched just a little. Maxwell had called last minute to say he wouldn't be coming to pick her up. "The driver will take you instead," he said flatly before hanging up. He didn't explain and Claire didn't ask. That was always the way it went with Maxwell Ford. He didn't believe in explanations, he believed in commands. Claire adjusted the strap of her clutch as murmurs circled the room the moment she entered. Not loud enough to hear but clear enough to feel. People looked at her with expressions ranging from polite curiosity to tight-lipped sympathy. And then she saw why. Maxwell stood by the host, a drink in hand, laughing easily. Clinging to his arm was a woman who could barely be called grown. A youthful beauty with curled hair, a sweet face and eyes that sparkled with mischief. Tessa Lang. The woman Maxwell said was just his new intern. The one Claire had found lipstick stains from. The one who had texted Maxwell at midnight asking if the meeting notes were clear. Tessa spotted her and lit up as though meeting an old friend. "Oh," she said brightly, breaking away from Maxwell and walking over. "You must be Sister Claire. Maxwell said you make the most refreshing American-style juice. Can I please try some? I'm dying of thirst." Claire blinked, stunned by the girl's audacity. Her tone was airy, innocent, as though this weren't a cruel joke but a friendly request. Maxwell didn't even flinch. He merely glanced at Claire, his eyes cool, his chin lifting in that imperious way he always used when he wanted something done. "Well, you heard her. Go make the juice." The music seemed to fall silent. Conversations died. Only the soft clink of glassware remained. Claire stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. But then she smiled. Soft, sweet, controlled. "Of course," she said. She turned and walked out of the hall. But not toward the kitchen. Claire had been to this villa once before years ago. She remembered the layout. Instead of heading to the tea room, she turned sharply down a different corridor, toward the maintenance wing. The hallway was darker here, unfinished. She stepped past the mop sinks and opened a narrow door to a utility area behind the wine cellar. A foul stench greeted her. A rusted faucet gurgled over an open drain. Sewage water pooled inside an old bucket. Claire grabbed an empty glass from a nearby cabinet, dipped it in the dark, murky liquid and held it up. The sewage water was thick, reeking of rotten metal. Perfect. She walked back calmly and approached the nearest butler, who stiffened at her presence. "Mr. Ford has requested this be served to Miss Lang," she said, her voice even. The butler hesitated. "Now," Claire added with a polite but unblinking stare. The man took the glass with both hands, unsure whether this was a joke or a trap. Claire didn't wait to see it delivered. She turned once more and walked toward the rear of the villa. As she reached the glass doors, the butler's shout echoed faintly behind her. "Miss. This is." Then gasps. A scream. Claire never looked back. The garden path curved gently through trimmed hedges and marble statues. Past the koi pond. Past the bamboo grove. She walked with her heels clicking steadily until the path turned to gravel. She took off her shoes, lifted them with one hand and kept walking. The stones pricked her feet but the pain felt oddly liberating. By the time she reached the side gate, the driver who brought her was long gone. No doubt dismissed by Maxwell. No doubt assuming she would stay. She opened her ride-hailing app and requested a car. A few moments later her phone rang. "Ma'am," the driver said apologetically, "vehicles aren't allowed into the complex. Can you walk to the main gate?" "I can," she replied softly. It was a long walk. The stars above were blurry, and she could feel the damp humidity clinging to her skin. Her dress caught against her legs. The stones were unforgiving. But she kept walking. And somewhere between the thorny hedges and the whispering trees, the strangest thing happened. Claire smiled. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the absurdity of it all. Or maybe it was the realization that she had finally done something for herself, not to please Maxwell, not to appease his mother, not to keep the family name untarnished. By the time she reached the main gate, her hair was loose, her feet were dirty, and her dress had a small tear at the hem. But her mind had never been clearer. The headlights of her ride cut through the night. The car pulled up gently and the driver stepped out. "Miss Bennet?" "Yes." She opened the door, got in and didn't look back. The first time Claire Bennet met Maxwell Ford it was raining. Not the poetic kind of rain that lightly dusts the world in romance, but a full-throated storm, merciless and cold. Claire had forgotten her umbrella that day, rushing to catch the metro after her shift at the university library. She had just graduated and was working 2 part-time jobs while trying to find full-time employment. Maxwell had been standing beneath the building awning, bone-dry in a dark navy trench coat and polished shoes. His driver was late. She didn't notice him at first. She was too busy trying to wring the water out of her sleeve without looking like a soaked puppy. "You'll catch a cold like that," a smooth baritone voice said. Claire looked up, and he smiled. He didn't offer his coat. Instead he handed her his umbrella. "You can return it to me at the cafe across from here tomorrow. 9 a.m., he added before she could protest. That was Maxwell Ford. Decisive. Confident. Unshakably composed. Claire didn't make it at 9 a.m. the next morning. She arrived at 8:45. He was already seated, reading the financial section. He closed the paper when he saw her and gestured to the seat across from him. "Claire, right?" he said, remembering her name though she had never given it. That was how it began. Maxwell had a way of making every conversation feel important, even when it wasn't. She'd been stunned by his presence, his tailored suits, his direct gaze, his effortless charm. She wasn't his usual type. That much was clear. Claire wasn't a socialite or a fashion influencer or the daughter of a real estate mogul. She was a girl raised by her grandmother in a modest apartment. A girl who always ordered the cheapest item on the menu and kept her resume folded inside her purse. But Maxwell didn't seem to care. He took her out to dinners. He bought her first designer dress. He sent flowers to her grandmother with little handwritten notes. And when her grandmother fell ill, Maxwell arranged for the best private care. Claire had never believed in fairy tales, until him. The proposal came like everything else with Maxwell. Sudden, smooth, impossible to refuse. Her grandmother's condition had worsened. There were whispers from the doctor that she might not make it to the end of the year. Maxwell came to visit one evening and sat by the old woman's bedside. When she said, "I just want to see my Claire married before I go," he took Claire's hand and said, "Then we'll get married." They hadn't even dated a full year. But Claire looked into his eyes and said yes. It was what her grandmother wanted. And it was what Claire had started to believe she wanted too. They had the wedding 2 months later. It was grand. Ornate. The kind that made magazines call it the society wedding of the season. There were white orchids everywhere, custom string quartets and aerial drone footage. But in all the glamour, Claire couldn't ignore the cold stares from Maxwell's family. Especially his mother. "Your dress is too simple," Mrs. Ford had said when she saw Claire in the fitting room. "And you've gained weight since our last meeting. Will you be able to keep up appearances as a Ford?" Claire smiled and said nothing. She had already learned that silence was her safest armor. On the morning of the wedding she overheard Maxwell's sister whispering to their aunt, "I give it a year. He'll grow tired of her." Claire walked down the aisle anyway. After the wedding, Claire moved into the Ford estate, a sprawling modern mansion with high ceilings, glass walls and too much silence. At first she tried to adjust. She asked the butler how things worked. She greeted the chefs and the gardeners. She tried to learn the schedule so she wouldn't get in the way. But no one really spoke to her. They took orders from Mrs. Ford. And Mrs. Ford didn't see Claire as family. The first week, Claire tried to help the kitchen staff prepare dinner. Mrs. Ford pulled her aside and said calmly, "The help doesn't need help. Your job is to cook for your husband, not to interfere with the estate staff." Claire nodded. She began waking up at 6 a.m. every day to prepare Maxwell's breakfast herself. Then she'd plan lunch even if he was rarely home. She cleaned his office, folded his shirts and kept his suits steamed. It wasn't that Maxwell demanded it. He simply expected it. When Claire brought up getting a job again, after all she had graduated with top honors in literature, Maxwell barely looked up from his tablet. "There's no need," he said. "You don't have to work. Just focus on the household." She tried once more, "But I'd like to do something meaningful, maybe freelance editing or—" "Claire," he interrupted. We're not struggling financially. Why work when you don't need to? The implication hung in the air. What else would you do anyway? So she stopped bringing it up. Her dreams became smaller each day. First she gave up writing. Then she stopped opening job emails. Eventually she forgot where she'd even stored her degree. Claire's only anchor in those early days was her grandmother. Maxwell had been attentive during her illness, often asking how she was doing. But after the wedding that concern seemed to fade. He still paid the bills but he rarely visited. When her grandmother's health declined rapidly one winter, Claire begged Maxwell to take time off for the hospital visits. I'm in the middle of negotiations, he said. She might not last the week. I'll send flowers, he replied. Claire sat beside her grandmother's bed alone when the monitor flatlined. After the funeral something inside Claire changed. She started noticing the things she had ignored before. The way Mrs. Ford only smiled at her in front of guests. How Maxwell's younger cousins never spoke to her at family dinners unless prompted. How his mother would hand her grocery lists, recipe books and menus with a smile and say, I know you like keeping busy. They didn't see her as a wife. Not even as a woman. To them Claire was just a housemaid who got lucky. A dressed-up servant who made their son's breakfast and kept her head down. The family called it dignified obedience. Claire called it suffocation. When Claire discovered she was pregnant, she thought it would change everything. It didn't. Maxwell smiled when she told him, kissed her forehead and said, That's good. Then he asked her to quit helping with any estate chores and just rest. But that only made her more isolated. No more cooking. No more cleaning. No more job. No more friends. Just silence. He tried to reconnect with Maxwell during those months. But he came home later and later. Sometimes he wouldn't show up at all. When she asked, he waved it off. Meetings ran late. By the 8th month, Claire started sleeping alone most nights. When she went into labor, Maxwell was on a business trip in Shanghai. He made it back an hour before delivery, stood by the door not beside her. Their son Eli was born just before dawn. Maxwell held him once, nodded at Claire and walked out to take a call. When they brought Eli home, Claire felt a surge of purpose. He stayed up every night feeding him, changing him, rocking him. Until one day Maxwell's mother came into the nursery. You look awful, she said. You'll ruin your skin. We'll assign a nurse to handle this. No, I can. We'll have her move in starting tomorrow, Mrs. Ford said. That night, Claire cried herself to sleep with Eli in her arms. The next morning the nurse arrived. A week later Eli was moved to the wing with the nanny suite. Claire was given a new task, organizing Maxwell's dinner parties. Her son was no longer hers to raise. It was sometime after Eli's first birthday that Maxwell's mother took Claire aside again. About the marriage certificate, she said quietly. Claire blinked. We haven't registered it yet. Exactly. And we won't, until you prove your worth as a wife. Claire stood there speechless. Don't bring this up again, the woman added with a tight smile. It would only cause unnecessary stress for the family. Claire nodded once, then left the room. That night she cooked dinner in silence. The ring on her finger glittered. But she knew what it was now, not a symbol of love. Just a leash. Present. The interior of the car smelled faintly of leather and perfume as Claire Bennett stared blankly out the tinted window. The city lights blurred past her in streaks of gold and red, but she saw none of it. Her phone buzzed again on the seat beside her. Maxwell. He didn't need to look. The first time it rang, her hand had twitched. The second time her stomach had twisted. By the 5th, her jaw was clenched so tightly it ached. By the 10th, her eyes were dry and calm. She didn't pick up. She wouldn't. Not this time. She reached down, flipped the phone face down, and let the vibration fade into the hum of the tires beneath her. Then the vibration stopped. A new sound. Ding. A message. She inhaled once, then turned the screen over. Maxwell. You think walking out makes you brave? Then be ready for the consequences. You will not see Eli for the next 3 months. Don't bother begging. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You disrespected the family. A woman like you needs to be reminded of her place. I've tolerated your silent tantrums long enough. From now on, if you want to see Eli, you'll learn to obey. Otherwise he stays with me. Permanently. Claire read the message once. Then again. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't gasp. Didn't cry. He just sat there. So, Maxwell had always known her weakness. Eli. He had dangled her son like a key to a locked door. Withheld him whenever she asked too many questions, when she dared to want more than breakfast duties and gala dresses. Eli had become her cage. And for years Claire had accepted it. Because she believed her presence in Eli's life, no matter how limited, mattered more than her dignity. "Driver," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Yes, ma'am." "Change direction. Take me to the Ford ancestral villa." The man blinked in the rearview mirror but said nothing. He took the next turn. Claire's grip tightened on her purse. She didn't know what she was hoping for. A hug. A child's plea to stay? But she needed to know. She was going to leave. He needed to know. The gates of the ancestral estate creaked open slowly, the guards letting her through with hesitant glances. She stepped out before the car had even stopped fully. The front garden was dimly lit, the house glowing faintly inside. Claire walked up the familiar stone steps, her heels clicking, then paused at the door. She didn't knock. She walked in. The butler appeared almost immediately, alarmed. "Madam, I'm here to see Eli." The man faltered, then nodded quickly and turned toward the hallway. Moments later, soft footsteps echoed. Claire turned. Eli emerged from the corridor, wearing pajamas and clutching a small toy car in his hand. He was growing fast, taller than last month. Still only 3 years old, but already with the stubborn sharpness of his father's blood. Claire knelt down slowly, smiling. "Hey, sweetheart." Eli blinked at her. "Mom. I came to see you," she said gently. "I missed you." He looked confused. "Why?" Her chest ached. "Because I'm your mom. And I love you." Eli stared. "Dad said you left." Claire nodded. "Yes, but I wanted to ask you something." She reached for his hand, but he didn't take it. "Would you like to come with me? Just you and me. We'll go somewhere warm. We can see the stars. You'll have your own room." Eli stepped back slightly. "No," he said firm. Claire swallowed. "Why not?" "I don't like you," he said, and her heart cracked open like glass under a heel. "I want to stay with Dad. He buys me stuff." She froze. Her hands stayed midair for a moment too long. Then slowly she lowered them. "I see," she whispered. Eli turned and walked away without looking back. Back in the car, Claire didn't cry. She just sat, staring out at the driveway until the driver hesitantly asked, "To the location?" "Yes," she said. When she returned to the main Ford villa, the house was quiet. Maxwell wasn't there. Of course not. She walked in through the side entrance, went up the stairs and entered the master bedroom for the last time. She moved slowly at first. Then faster. She pulled open drawers, stripped hangers, unhooked the few dresses she still cared about. Her laptop. Her journals. A photo of Eli she couldn't bear to leave behind. It all fit into 2 suitcases. She didn't touch Maxwell's things. Not out of fear. But because she wanted no trace of him with her. By midnight, the cab was waiting at the gates. Claire stood at the threshold for a long moment, hands wrapped around the suitcase handles. The house behind her stood still and grand, glowing from within like a lie told too many times. She turned her back to it. And walked away. At the airport, she bought a one-way ticket to the place she'd always dreamed of. A quiet lakeside town where people rode bikes, where bookstores still existed, where no one knew her name or what kind of juice she refused to make. The flight boarded at 5:40 a.m. As the plane took off, she stared down at the city she once called home. Maxwell. Eli. The mansion. The silk gowns. The gourmet meals. The silence. The waiting. All of it shrank below her. Gone. And Claire? Claire breathed for the first time in years. The plane touched down just as the morning sun stretched over the mountain ridge. Claire stepped off with a canvas tote over her shoulder and nothing but 2 suitcases in tow. Her entire past was now zipped into luggage, and her future? It was quiet. Soft. Just like the air in this town. Dolly wasn't a place people rushed through. It was the kind of place you had to listen to. Streets were narrow, flowers spilled out of cracked walls, and elderly women sold handmade soaps and persimmons on wicker trays. Claire walked slowly down a cobblestone path toward the rental car terminal, watching locals open their storefronts with gentle rituals, sweeping porches, lighting incense, setting out wicker chairs. She had arrived. Not just in a town, but in a version of herself she hadn't known for years. Claire's first stop was a modest guest house she had booked for a week. The room was clean and sunlit, with creaky wooden floors and a linen curtain that fluttered even with the smallest breeze. She slept for 12 hours straight that first night. No one called. No one barged in. No footsteps echoed in grand, empty corridors. It was the first time she hadn't woken up to a schedule, a scolding or a Sunday countdown. Just silence. And sunlight. By the fourth day she found the place. A little house tucked between a tea shop and an abandoned pottery studio. Its paint was faded, the door scratched, but when Claire stepped into the front room and saw the arched window that faced the street, she could see it clearly. The bookstore. The little counter tucked near the window. Shelves stretching toward the ceiling. A small couch with a knitted blanket. Her dream. "I'll take it," she told the agent, who blinked in surprise. "It hasn't been renovated in years," he warned. "I'm not afraid of dust," she said simply. Claire bought the house with a quiet confidence she hadn't felt in years. She didn't negotiate. She didn't ask anyone for advice. The money her grandmother left her, the same money Maxwell always scoffed at, was more than enough. It wasn't a palace. It was a home. She spent the next 2 weeks cleaning, painting and choosing shelves. She repurposed old crates for displays, painted the window frames seafoam green, and wrote "The Bennett Book Nook" in chalk across a wooden sign. Every brushstroke felt like an apology to herself. And a promise. At the back of the house she arranged her private space. A small bedroom, a reading corner, a simple kitchen with pale blue tiles. She hung a dream catcher above her bed, not because she believed in magic but because she wanted something beautiful to look at when she woke up. In the mornings she walked to the market to buy fresh bread and herbs. In the afternoons she shelved books and brewed cinnamon tea. Business was slow. She didn't mind. A few university students would stop by to read or sip tea. Sometimes travelers wandered in by accident and stayed for hours. Nobody knew who she had been. Nobody asked what she had walked away from. They only saw the quiet woman who smiled softly and always gave good book recommendations. One rainy evening, Claire was organizing the poetry shelf when she found her old notebook. Its cover was frayed, the spine cracked. She hadn't opened it since before the wedding. Her handwriting was younger back then, looser, lighter. Pages were filled with story ideas, sketches, snippets of dialogue. She sat by the window as rain tapped gently against the glass and began to read. She had once wanted to write novels. She had once written a short story that got published in a national magazine. She remembered that day, the way her grandmother had cried saying, "This is just the beginning." But then came the wedding. The baby. The villa. Maxwell. Somewhere in between the gala dresses and breakfast menus, she had silenced that part of herself. Now it stirred again. Claire took out her laptop that night, opened a blank document and stared at the screen for a long time. She didn't know what to write. But she knew one thing. She would. The next morning she brewed coffee, opened the shop and typed the first sentence. It was terrible. But it was hers. And that was enough. Every evening she closed shop at 6 p.m., watered the potted plants on her windowsill and went for a walk by the lake. There was a bench under a willow tree that became her ritual stop. She'd sit there with her tote, sometimes with a book, sometimes with a thermos of tea. One evening, as children laughed nearby and dragonflies skimmed the water's edge, Claire whispered to herself, "I don't miss him." She was surprised to hear it aloud. But it was true. She didn't miss the villa. Or the way Maxwell kissed her forehead like a politician. Or how Eli's affection had to be earned with silence and obedience. She missed the idea of a family. But not the one she had. Weeks passed. Then a month. No calls from Maxwell. No messages from Eli. Sometimes that silence made her ache. Other times it gave her strength. She began to recognize the woman in the mirror again, her skin bare, her hair loose, her smile unforced. She didn't dress for appearances anymore. She wore linen. And sneakers. And sometimes no makeup at all. And still, she felt more beautiful now than she ever had in pearls and heels. At night she would write. Slowly the words came. A woman who vanished from a party and never looked back. A bookstore with a secret room. A child who said goodbye too easily. A man who loved her enough to wait in silence. She didn't know what the ending would be. Not yet. But she would write it. Just like she was writing her life now. One honest line at a time. The sky opened without warning. Claire had just finished shelving a new batch of translated novels when thunder rumbled like an old grudge. Rain began to lash against the bookstore's tall front window, warping the sleepy afternoon light into 1,000 broken lines. She moved to close the wooden shutters when she heard the sudden squeak of tires and the clatter of a bicycle against the curb. A figure bolted through the downpour. He reached the awning with a quick hop, his arms wrapped tightly around a cloth bundle from the front basket. "Boss," he called through the sound of the rain. "Mind if I wait here for the storm to pass?" His voice was low, warm, even apologetic. Claire leaned out the door. "Of course," she said. "Come in." The man hesitated. "I'm soaking wet. Don't want to dirty your floor." She waved him off with a small smile. "Trust me. I've cleaned worse." He stepped inside, brushing water from his jacket with a firm sweep of his arm. Claire got a better look at him then, mid-20s tall with tan skin and dark features. Not the delicate, polished kind Maxwell had embodied. This was real. Strong in the way you only get from saving things with your bare hands. He looked up and froze. Claire tilted her head. "You okay?" "You're Claire," he said softly. "Claire Bennett." Her smile faltered slightly. "Yes, have we met?" "Noah," he said, stepping closer. "Noah Carter." The name meant nothing to her at first. Her expression must have shown it. He gently lifted the cloth-wrapped object in his hand and unwrapped it to reveal a small, slightly chipped ceramic flower pot. Its glaze was faded, but at the bottom were two uneven letters scratched in by a child's hand. "Silaiari." Her breath caught. "I made this," she whispered. "In a pottery class," he nodded. "You were 7. Your dad brought you." Her vision blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from memory. That day had been warm. Her father had joked that her cactus would probably outlive them all. "You were there." "I was trapped in the toy store when the mall caught fire. I was 6. Your father carried me out. He was the last one still inside." Claire swallowed. "He didn't make it out." Noah nodded slowly. "My parents never forgot him. They wanted to adopt you after everything. Your mother died shortly after, right?" Claire looked down. "Yes. Bicycle accident. A truck driver. It was quick. I was 10. "I remember," Noah said quietly. "We had a room ready for you. My mom painted it pink and yellow." Claire's chest constricted. "But my grandmother came for me." "She got there first," he said gently. "We never even got to meet you. Till now." They sat down on the old green couch by the window. The rain blurred the street, turning the outside world into a watercolor painting. Claire turned the pot in her hands, fingers brushing the familiar grooves. "You kept it all these years?" "I saw it on the porch of your old house," Noah said, eyes fixed on the past. "No one was home. I was just a kid and I didn't know what to do. But I saw your name on it, so I took it. I tried to grow something in it once, but the cactus died in a week." Claire laughed quietly. "You watered it, didn't you?" "Every day. That's why. You drowned it." "Hey," he smiled. "I was trying." Their laughter mingled with the soft patter of the rain. "Felt good. Safe." Claire made tea. Not the fancy kind, just ginger with honey. Noah took the mug gratefully, holding it with both hands like a boy trying to warm himself. "You live here now?" he asked. She nodded. "Moved in a month ago. Bought the place." He looked around, impressed. "It suits you." "How would you know what suits me?" she teased, lifting an eyebrow. He grinned. "Lucky guess." The conversation drifted easily after that. About the town, the weather, how he worked in the local fire brigade now. It felt surreal. Like the universe had threaded their lives back together across all that time and grief. "You remind me of him," Noah said quietly after a long pause. "Pie father." "Yeah. The way you looked when you opened the door. Calm. Brave. Even in the rain." Claire looked out the window, letting that settle. She hadn't thought of herself as brave in a long time. Not since she started measuring her worth in how well breakfast was cooked. When the rain finally slowed, Noah stood and slung his damp jacket over one shoulder. "Do you fix pots here too?" she asked, motioning to the repaired flower pot. "No. Found an old guy up north who specializes in restoring broken ceramic. Took me forever to track him down." Claire looked down at the pot again. A memory. A symbol. A rescue that had rippled through 2 lives. You didn't have to go through all that. I know, he said. But some things are worth fixing. He looked at her when he said it. Not the pot. Her. Same time next rainstorm? He joked as he reached the door. Claire smirked. Next time I'll charge for shelter. I'll bring cookies. He stepped out and the door closed gently behind him. Claire stood in the quiet, the warmth of the tea still in her hands, and something else blooming deep inside her. Something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The rainstorm passed but Noah Carter kept showing up. At first Claire thought it was coincidence. He'd stop by in the evening right after his shift, wearing his uniform jacket slung over one shoulder, boots damp from city dust. He'd wave through the bookstore's window with a boyish grin, hold up coffee or bread and ask casually, "Need help?" She never said yes. But she never said no either. By the end of the first week he had rearranged her storage room, fixed a stuck cabinet drawer, and labeled the entire nonfiction shelf without being asked. You alphabetized by subtitle? Claire asked, frowning. Noah looked sheepish. Is that not right? She laughed. No. But it's kind of adorable. He grinned. Then I meant to. It became routine. Noah would drop in after work. Sometimes in full uniform, sometimes in jeans and a worn gray hoodie. He'd lean on the counter while she brewed tea and talk about the odd emergencies of the day. A cat stuck in a bakery chimney, a man who'd set off fireworks in his bathroom. Why the bathroom? She asked one evening. He said it was acoustically pleasing. Claire shook her head, laughing so hard she had to wipe her eyes. People are wild. And we're paid to stop their wildness, Noah added dramatically, holding up a makeshift foam sword he found near the kid's corner. Fear not, noble bookseller, I shall defend this realm. Claire rolled her eyes. Put that down before you hurt yourself. One day he brought her milk tea. She took a sip and blinked. This is exactly right. 30% sugar, no ice. You mentioned it once, he said casually. She hadn't remembered saying it. But he had. It wasn't just the tea. He remembered everything. The way she hated squid skewers after a bad food poisoning incident. The way she liked to organize the classics by region, not author. The way her eyes glazed over when she was tired but kept pushing through anyway. No one noticed. And that terrified her. Claire wasn't used to being noticed. Maxwell never remembered her birthday unless his assistant reminded him. He didn't know her favorite flower. He thought she liked French cuisine. She was allergic to shellfish. In the Ford estate she had been invisible. Now a man remembered how she took her tea. It unsettled her more than it should have. Because it made her feel something she wasn't ready for. Safe. One evening as dusk painted the storefront in orange and violet, Claire sat on the couch while Noah swept the floors. She was quiet. Not distracted. Just thoughtful. No one noticed. Long day? He asked gently. She nodded. Kind of. Not work-wise. Just in here. She tapped her chest lightly. He sat beside her, not too close but near enough that she felt the warmth of him. Want to talk about it? Claire hesitated. Then slowly she began. It wasn't a dramatic flood of words. No sobs. No breaking down. Just calm recollection. Like peeling wallpaper off an old wall. She told him about Maxwell. The wedding that was more show than substance. The promise of a marriage certificate that never came. The pregnancy, the labor alone, the child she saw once a week as punishment for speaking too much. She told him about the juice at the party. How she replaced it with sewage water. How she never looked back. Noah listened. Not with pity. Not with gasps. Just quiet heartbreak. When she mentioned how Eli had told her, I don't like you. I want to stay with Dad, her voice trembled. Just once. And that's when Noah's eyes brimmed. He didn't try to hide it. He just looked at her, hurting in a way only someone with a real heart could hurt. Claire looked at him surprised. You're crying. He wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. They actually had the heart to hurt you like that. She laughed, soft and breathless. I've told this story to myself 100 times. But this is the first time it hurt less. Because you weren't alone this time. Silence fell between them. Not awkward. Just real. Raw. Warm. They sat there as the light faded, both leaning back against the couch cushions. No more words. Claire closed her eyes briefly. She didn't feel nervous. Or defensive. or desperate for approval. He just felt understood. Later, as Noah stood to leave, he picked up his backpack and hesitated at the door. "I'm glad your grandmother got to raise you," he said suddenly. "But I always wished I had a sister." Claire smiled. "You might have gotten a weird one." He winked. "I like weird." She waved as he walked into the night, disappearing into the soft sounds of the street. And when she turned back into the shop, she felt something shift inside her. Not a thunderclap. Not a fire. Just a single click. Like a lock turning inside her chest. And the door to something new, quietly opening. The bookstore clock ticked past 6:15. Claire wiped her hands on a dish towel and glanced at the door again. It was quiet. Peaceful. But wrong. Noah was always here by 6. He never said he would be. But he always was. She paced behind the counter, fidgeting with the ceramic pen holder he had glued together last week. She checked her phone. No messages. She told herself not to overthink it. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was out with friends. Maybe there was a surprise fire inspection. Or maybe he just needed a night off. But Noah would have said something. He always did. By 6:45, Claire had checked his contact page 3 times. She composed a message, then deleted it. She told herself it was ridiculous. That she wasn't his girlfriend. That she had no right to panic. By 7 o'clock, panic had her anyway. She opened the local news feed. The top headline hit her like a slap. Chemical factory catches fire in West Dolly District. Fire brigade on site. 1 firefighter injured. Her throat closed. Her vision narrowed. And suddenly she was 10 years old again, clutching a hospital wall, waiting for news about her father. She grabbed her keys. Didn't even lock the shop. Didn't take a coat. Didn't care. The cab driver recognized the address the moment she gave it. "That's where the smoke's coming from." Claire nodded, her hands trembling in her lap. Each minute on the road felt like glass slicing through her chest. She had tried so hard to stay calm for years. To not let the past haunt her. To never give her heart away again. But Noah had slipped past all of that. And now she might lose him too. The factory perimeter was chaos. Sirens. Hoses. Smoke curling like ribbons into the night sky. Claire jumped out of the cab before it stopped. She ran toward the yellow barrier tape, dodging puddles and shouting officers. "Miss, you can't be here. I need to find someone." "Firefighter, Noah Carter." The officer hesitated. "You family?" "Yes," she lied, breath hitching. "Please. Just, please." He waved her to the side of the building. She searched every face. Every uniform. The smoke was thick and the shadows played tricks on her. Every silhouette felt like him. And then wasn't. Until finally, a figure emerged from the far side of the building. Helmet off. Stood on his face. Shirt tied around his waist. Eyes scanning the crowd. "Noah." He turned. Claire ran. She didn't stop until she slammed into him. Arms around his neck, face buried in his chest, sobs erupting like an old dam cracking wide open. "You scared me," she choked. I thought you." "I'm okay," he said breathless. "I'm okay, I promise." She didn't let go. Not for a full minute. Not until her heart remembered how to beat again. Noah pulled back just enough to hold her face in his hands. His thumbs wiped streaks of ash and tears. "I didn't know you'd be this worried," he whispered. "I didn't know I would be either," Claire admitted, voice cracking. "I should have messaged. I got called in last minute." "I thought you were gone," she said, her eyes locked to his. "Like my father." "I couldn't." Her voice broke again. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "Not with me." She stared at him. And realized something profound. She wasn't afraid of loving him. She was afraid she already did. They stood there in the middle of the chaos, wrapped in a stillness only grief and survival can create. "I've been waiting for someone to come back to," Noah said quietly. Claire blinked. "What?" "Ever since your father saved me. I never forgot. Kept the pot. I joined the fire brigade. I looked for you. Not actively, but I think I always hoped I'd meet you again." Her throat tightened. "Why?" "Because even as a kid, I felt like you were supposed to be in my life. And now that you're here," he paused. "I don't want to lose you before I get to love you properly." The wind howled. Sirens flared. But all Claire heard was her own heart, thudding like a distant drum. Back at the bookstore that night he stood outside her door, still smoky, still stained. "I should go clean up," he said. "But I'll come back tomorrow." Claire hesitated, then reached out, took his soot-streaked hand in hers. "No," she said softly. "Stay." His eyes widened slightly. She smiled. "Just sit with me. I don't want to be alone tonight." So he did. They sat on the old couch with no lights on. Just the faint glow of the street lamp outside, bathing them in amber. Nothing happened. No kiss. No big declarations. Just two people sitting close. Breathing. Existing. Together. And for Claire? It was more intimate than any night she had ever spent with a man before. But this time, she had chosen it. The morning light filtered through the bookstore's front windows, turning the dust motes into floating gold. Claire stood behind the counter, arranging a new display of poetry books when the bell over the door rang. She glanced up with a smile, then froze. Maxwell Ford stood in the doorway. Not as a memory. Not in a dream. But here. Thought. Firking. Uninvited. "Hello, Claire," he said like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't once used her love like currency. Claire set the book down. "Maxwell." He looked around the shop, hands in his designer coat pockets, the perfect picture of upper-class casual. Charming place. A little dusty but quaint. "What do you want?" He feigned offense. "Is that how you greet your husband?" She crossed her arms. "Ex-husband." He chuckled. "We never signed anything. I walked away. You let me." "Temporarily," he replied, stepping further in. "I assumed you just needed time to calm down. And I figured eventually you'd miss your son." At that Claire's jaw clenched. He smiled wider. "Thought that might strike a nerve." "I didn't come here to fight," Maxwell added smoothly. "I came because Eli's been asking questions. He wants to see you." Claire blinked. "Last time I asked to see him, you punished me with silence." Maxwell shrugged. "Discipline is necessary when someone walks out in the middle of a party." "Discipline," she repeated. "You treat Eli like a pawn. Like a reward system. You make it sound so cruel." Claire stepped out from behind the counter. "Because it is. You only want me back now because you've heard I'm doing fine." He tilted his head. "You think I came here out of jealousy?" "No," she said. "I think you came because for the first time in your life, you're not the center of someone's world. And it rattles you." Maxwell's expression darkened. "You think this," he waved a hand at the books, the shelves, the worn couch, "is a life? Living like a common shopkeeper? You were the wife of one of the city's most powerful men." "I was a prisoner," Claire replied. "You were protected. I was erased." The bell over the door jingled again. Noah stepped in holding 2 cups of coffee. He paused when he saw Maxwell, then looked at Claire. Her eyes met his. Steady. Unafraid. Noah walked up beside her and handed her the coffee without saying a word. Then he turned to Maxwell and offered a polite nod. "You must be the husband." "Maxwell Ford," he said, looking Noah up and down. "And you are?" "Noah Carter." Maxwell's jaw twitched. "Firefighter, right? I've read about your unit. Brave work." "Thank you." "And now you sweep floors in a bookstore?" Claire saw it, the flicker of condescension. The power play. Noah didn't rise to it. "I do what's needed," he said simply. "And I don't measure worth in titles." Claire smiled faintly behind her cup. Maxwell turned back to her. "I'll say this once, Claire. Come back. For Eli's sake. He's getting older. He needs a mother figure. You owe him that much." "I owe him the truth," she said. "And I'll give it to him when he's ready to hear it." Maxwell stepped closer. "Don't make this difficult." Claire stepped between them. Her voice dropped, low and calm. "You don't get to make demands anymore. You don't get to threaten me. That part of our story is over." Maxwell stared at her for a long moment. And for the first time Claire saw it. He was shaken. Not because she was yelling. But because she wasn't. She was composed. Unbothered. Done. He straightened his collar. "You'll regret this." "No," Claire said. "I regret every day I stayed." He blinked. And then slowly he turned and walked out, silent, controlled, and smaller than he'd ever seemed before. The bookstore door clicked shut behind him. Noah turned to her. You okay? Claire let out a slow breath. More than okay. She leaned against the counter, gripping the coffee he brought her like an anchor. He won't let go easily, she said after a moment. Then it's good you're not alone, Noah replied. She looked at him, really looked. In Maxwell's world, love had been about control. In Noah's presence, love felt like support beams, quiet, steady, always holding her up. She reached across the counter and touched his hand. Thank you. For just standing there. Anytime, he said softly. And in that simple exchange Claire felt it. The final page of one chapter turning. And the next one waiting to be written. It was a Tuesday morning, slow and overcast. Claire had just finished brewing a fresh pot of cinnamon tea when she heard the bookstore door creak open. She didn't look up at first. Be right with you, she called gently, wiping her hands on a towel. Then a voice answered. I didn't know where else to go. Her heart froze. Maxwell. He stood in the doorway, alone this time without his usual polished arrogance. His tailored coat hung awkwardly from his frame, and his eyes were hollow, sunken in a way she hadn't seen before. Claire stood still. He stepped inside slowly, his voice shaking. I miss you. She inhaled sharply. Maxwell. I'm not here to argue, he said quickly, palms raised in surrender. I'm not here to control you. I swear. She said nothing. I don't know how it happened, he continued. How everything between us fell apart. Maybe I didn't see it coming. Maybe I refused to. But the silence in that villa is killing me. Claire folded the towel slowly, methodically. He took a step closer. I walk through those rooms and expect to hear you humming in the kitchen. I still check my phone out of habit at 6 p.m., waiting for some text, even if it's just you saying you'll be late coming home. You never answered those messages when I used to send them, she said quietly. He flinched. I know, he whispered. I was a fool. A proud, selfish fool. Claire looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time he looked like a man who knew he'd lost something irreplaceable. I want to forget everything, he said, his voice cracking. Everything that hurt us. I want to start fresh. I want you. I need you. Please, Claire. Come back. Behind her the wooden floor creaked. Noah had entered from the back hallway, book in one hand, mug in the other. He paused the moment he saw Maxwell. Claire didn't turn around. But she felt him, Noah, close behind her. Steady. Silent. Present. Maxwell noticed him too. His jaw tightened. So this is what you left me for? No, Claire said, her voice calm and clear. This is what I found after I finally walked away from you. Maxwell stepped forward again, almost desperate now. We have a child together. You use our child, she said firmly. You withhold him. Weaponize him. I was trying to keep our family together. No, Maxwell, she said this time louder. You wanted control. And I'm done being someone's silent sacrifice. The silence in the bookstore thickened. Maxwell opened his mouth, closed it, and then looked at Noah. This isn't over, he said. But Claire stepped forward, blocking his path with a grace Maxwell had never truly understood. It's over, she said. For me it's been over for a long time. You just didn't notice. Maxwell stood there for a long moment, then turned, and walked out with nothing. No ring. No promise. No legacy. Just the hollow echo of what he'd lost. As the bell chimed behind him, Claire let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Noah walked up and gently set his hand on her back. You okay? He asked softly. She nodded. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. You didn't need to. She looked up at him. He begged. I saw. I still said no. He smiled faintly, proud. Because you remember who you are now. She leaned into him. Noah wrapped his arms around her. No tight grip, no desperate clutch. Just warmth. Steadiness. Reassurance. You never, he whispered against her hair, have to bend for anyone ever again. And in that quiet hug under the soft light of her shop, Claire felt something settle in her chest. Not victory. Not vengeance. Just peace. The kind she'd earned. Spring arrived like a soft song. The bookstore's front door was propped open with a stack of antique novels. Claire stood on a step stool, pinning paper garlands to the top shelf while Noah wrestled with the espresso machine behind the counter. Instructions say to press twice, she called over her shoulder. I did press twice, Noah shouted back. It's the machine that's being dramatic. Claire peeked down from her perch. You two are a match made in heaven then. He flashed her a playful glare, then mockingly held up the portafilter. Say that again and I'll serve your tea with steamed anchovy water. He grinned. Romantic threats like that are why I fell for you. It had been a year since the day Maxwell walked out. A year of rebuilding. Laughing. Burning. Noah never rushed her. He was patient with her silences, steady through her doubts and relentless with his affection. He brought her flowers wrapped in old book pages. He replaced her broken windows himself instead of calling a handyman. He made late-night ramen when she got too absorbed in writing to eat. Claire in return left him notes in his boots. Doodled silly cartoons in his planner. Kissed his shoulder every morning before he left for the firehouse. They lived like partners. Not perfect, but perfectly chosen. The bookstore cafe had grown too. Locals adored the mismatched mugs, the poetry nights, the firefighter's discount. Noah insisted on adding to the chalkboard. Claire's first novel, Ashes and Honey, had been published 2 months ago. Reviews were glowing. One critic called it a quiet triumph of survival and soft strength. She hadn't told many people the story was hers. But Noah knew. And every time he caught her staring out the window, lost in her thoughts, he'd whisper, "Page 327's still my favorite." That morning, Claire found a tiny envelope taped to the bookstore door. Inside was a folded note. Dear Claire, close at 6. Wear the green dress. Trust me. And she rolled her eyes. Dramatic much? Till she smiled. She wore the green dress. At exactly 6 p.m., Noah appeared in the doorway, freshly shaved, holding a bouquet of wild daisies and a crooked grin. I don't know how to do this perfectly, he said. But I promise I'm trying. Claire blinked. What? He stepped forward and gently took her hand. Just follow me. He led her out through the back alley, down the cobblestone road, and up a small hill that overlooked the lake. The sun was beginning to dip, casting streaks of gold across the water. In the clearing, a blanket was laid out. Fairy lights strung from tree branches above. A tiny cake sat in the center, shaped like a book. Claire gasped. Did you bake? I tried, Noah said. It tasted like drywall. So I bought this one and staged the crime scene. She laughed, tears already stinging her eyes. Noah knelt, pulled a small velvet box from his jacket, opened it. Inside was a delicate silver ring with a tiny leaf-shaped emerald. Not flashy, but hers. Completely. I don't want perfection, he said softly. I just want us. The burnt toast mornings, the late-night edits, the stupid jokes and sleepy kisses. I want a life where you never have to fold yourself in half to be loved. Claire stared at him, heart thudding. I want to marry you, Claire Bennett. Not because I saved you, but because you saved yourself. And I got lucky enough to walk beside you after. Tears spilled over her cheeks. She knelt too, right there in front of him. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. 1,000 yes. They sat in the grass, barefoot and happy, feeding each other bites of cake and laughing so hard they tipped the box of candles over. I think I dropped frosting in your hair, Noah said, trying not to laugh. Claire touched her curls. Let me guess, anchovy flavored? Old joke, he replied, kissing her temple. Retire it. Only if you retire the dramatic firefighter entrances. Unlikely. She rolled her eyes. This is what I get for falling for a man with hero syndrome. And abs, he added. Claire laughed. Definitely the abs. They danced under the fairy lights to no music at all. Just the sound of the lake. The wind. Their laughter. And when the stars came out, Claire whispered, I never thought I'd have this. You do, Noah said. And you always will. Later that night, back at the bookstore, her bookstore, they sat side by side on the worn green couch. I used to think love had to be hard, Claire murmured. Painful. Sacrificial. Noah nodded. Me too. But this, she said, resting her head on his shoulder. This feels like breathing. Because it's real. She smiled, eyes closing. No more bending, he whispered. Only dancing, she whispered back. And so, in a quiet town under soft light, between shelves filled with stories, Claire Bennett began her greatest chapter yet. One she chose. One she wrote. One where love didn't come in demands. but in laughter, in warmth, in a man who stood behind her, not in front of her. Forever. The end.